Okay. Okay. Maybe let's start there, right? Yeah. Okay. So Mark Zuckerberg, let's start from Mark Zuckerberg. He mentioned that there'll be no junior programmers by the end of this year because that job will be taken up by AI.
hmm
Do you think that makes sense?
Does that mean that everyone starts from at a quote unquote senior level? Can someone who just fresh out of college, right? Would they still be junior level, or would AI help them to become senior as a result? Like, what is now the definition of a senior person?
Assuming that like a senior engineer still remains today's senior engineer, right? So not lowering the bar for senior engineering because I can see the perspective that Zuckerberg's coming from, and I'm seeing a lot in my daily life as well. In some way, I feel lucky that I saw this journey as AI was being adopted in coding, and I could get on that bandwagon as like it evolved. And it's evolved pretty fast in the last 3 years, right? I use GitHub Copilot since inception, and now I'm starting to use Cursor a lot. And my whole workflow has changed quite a bit. So what it seems like a lot of like grunt, easy tasks can be taken over by AI now. And there definitely are mistakes. And that's where a senior engineer comes into play, or that kind of knowledge comes into play, where you can maneuver the tool to do what you want it to do and not just dump code into a code base as it is. So there's more of this maneuvering I've seeing starting to happen rather than write lots of crazy amounts of code.
Sounds to me that the skill of maneuvering, i.e., able to read the code, the output is important.
Yeah. And typically this is the progression you see in engineers as well, right? Software engineers. As they progress through the ranks, you can see their ability to read code dramatically improves, and their ability to zone in on a particular part of the code base also dramatically improves. So if you have a code base of 100,000 lines divided across multiple files, you're able to figure out quite quickly with no prior knowledge of the code base as to where a certain responsibility lies in the code base. And that ability to read fast actually helps maneuver these kind of models.
Yeah, I get you.
It's quite an interesting era we live in, right? Because on one side, AI is improving on natural language, like dramatically improving. And what's the easiest natural language task? Coding. Coding is highly structured language. It follows syntax, so you don't have to worry about too many exceptions to the way the language is constructed. It's all constructed in a rule-based way. And it exists in the digital realm. It started in the digital realm. It exists in the digital realm, which means you have lots of data on coding. Like you have entire repositories of data on GitHub. And that alone probably beats like your language data sets, which is like all of Wikipedia and stuff.
Okay. So you're saying it's relatively accurate and precise, and because of the amount of data that's available. And my also initial thought is what's natural to you might not be natural to other people, right?
I'm not coming from like a natural to human being point of view. It's more because like the way code is constructed, it has to be read by an interpreter or a compiler, right? And therefore it needs to follow rules.
Yep, it has rules and logic. Okay.
It has rules and logics, yes, syntaxes. So in C++, like if you skip a semicolon where it's supposed to be, it's illegal.
Of course.
It's an illegal line of code. And therefore, you have a highly structured language. And these LLMs have been like doing really well in like unstructured languages like English, where you have periodic exceptions to a rule. However, in coding, you don't have that problem. If you need to go from point A to point B, there are so many ways you can go from point A to point B, but all of them have to fall under a focus of syntax. And I think that's where like it's an easier task for language models because they don't have to deal with the intricacies of exceptions and learning those from data. Instead, they just have to learn the syntaxes of each language and essentially translating logic, which is natural language, like prompt, into syntax. And sometimes they can even, if constructed well, you basically translate that into an intermediate form that can translate that intermediate form into multiple languages. So you have the same kind of mechanism for C++ or Python or XYZ,
Nice.
So it's funny, like coders are the first people to get affected by coding language models.
Did you see that coming?
No, actually, like it was quite obvious. Like in hindsight, it's very, very 2020. Like really obvious that they're coming for coding first. Didn't see it at the time, but really understood it when I started using Copilot in 2021, 2022. I don't remember.
Are you going to be a product manager next year?
I think so. I think either I'm going to be a product manager or I'm going to be like this epic 10x engineer.
Okay.
Like 100x engineer. So it's one of the two things. Yeah. There's still this human element in today's workflows where you have to check what the AI writes. But tomorrow that might keep reducing, over time.
Yeah. AI checks itself or another AI checks the other AI.
And the grunt job would be in like setting up the test infrastructure, I believe. So the human sets up the test infrastructure and the guardrails for the AI to operate in and know when it's doing the right job or not doing the right job. And then you just piggyback on top of that and keep pumping out features.
Oh, you said it's goals to outline what's considered a good job and a bad job, right?
Yes. So like typically the test infrastructure runs on like continuous integration, right? So CI. And as long as you scaffold that well, basically a failing test means it's no-go. So the AI you can give it access to these tests and basically say, hey, either fix the test or fix your feature. And when you give it access, like AI does a pretty decent job. It understands whether the test is wrong or the feature is wrong, given the right kind of context.
I saw something on LinkedIn on my feed. This other product manager influencer interviewed a software engineer who offered a tip on how to utilize AI for coding better. And he suggested the term, have the AI reflect on the code. And what that means is pretty much what I assume DeepSeek does, which is provide the whole set of reasoning on why it's coding it that way. And then also ask it to create a plan for it. How would they go about coding it? And so that you could read those and modify it before actually code. And so it helps you, I guess, check at a higher level, or it's an easier way to check is what I'm assuming. As that's his like go-to starting tip in terms of coding. Thoughts on that? Have you tried things like that? His suggestion was don't tell it to code immediately. Just have it all laid out to you on its, thoughts and plans, etc. on the approach.
Yeah, I use that kind of mechanism extensively, actually. Maybe not the same way, but I use it quite extensively. So I write very in-depth requirements documents these days. And based on those requirements documents, I give it the rules of the play, basically. And then I go ahead and actually, last night, I live coded a project using AI. I hardly wrote a line of code here and there. I was writing a couple of lines of code. And basically, it did everything based on a goals file that I wrote. And I'm actually going to, I'll share it with you right now. And this goals file basically outlined what the project should have been and what I expect AI to do. So here it is. So here I'm saying, hey, this is my project description. This project is called Ambi Alert. And the end goal is like a reverse search engine. And these are the tasks. So I say, we're not going to build everything in one go. We have these files of references. And these are what I wanted to build.
These are comments within your code, right? Right now.
It's a markdown file. So it's almost like a Notion doc for all practical purposes. So this is how it renders, for example. So it's basically just a requirements doc.
See, okay. It just has no... Sorry, I got fooled by the text, the font that looks like code. Hence, I thought there were comments. So it's marked down. Okay, this is something new for me. Uh, it's been a while since I looked into a AI-based coder's point of view. Go on.
Yeah.
So I see
So I gave
there's
it a
a
bunch of tasks, yeah. And then these I updated later. So I wanted to point it to this section specifically. So I said, I put it in a different section. And then I gave it an idea about the project structure. So I told it how I scaffolded the project. So it doesn't like bring like its existing Pythonic knowledge, instead works in the constraint of this template.
Yep. Before you move forward, is what are we looking at? Is what platform is this?
Sweet. So this is Cursor,
Mm-hmm.
and Cursor is a fork of VS Code, which is this pretty flexible code editor, and it's open source. So the company behind Cursor, I believe it's called Cursor AI, basically forked VS Code from Microsoft and replaced the GitHub Copilot that Microsoft puts in VS Code by their own Copilot, and they call it Cursor AI.
I see.
And it's like $10 a month or $20 a month. I don't quite remember. It
Mm.
is phenomenal at coding. The more you play around with it, the more you realize how to work with it. So there's this like your brain is also adapting to the way it works, and then your productivity skyrockets if used well.
Mm.
So for as a manager, I found Cursor to be the biggest boon that that has happened in my life for the last year, more or less. Like I've been struggling with context shifting because I lead a team, I manage people, and I contribute as an IC.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found like my IC time always takes a hit, and I
Mm.
end up having to work late hours if I want to do justice to all three. And now, quite often, what I do is I set Cursor on a task, go for lunch, come back, and review what it's done,
Mm. Mm.
and then push it. So the amount of tickets I'm able to churn as an individual has dramatically increased.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I find it so easy to stay in a flow with. If I have 20 minutes, I set Cursor to something, it does something, and then I can come back. At the end of 20 minutes, I have a feature that basically I can push.
Mm.
Yeah. So this is basically what I give Cursor. And if you see right down, I even give it like principles or guiding principles. I say build things modularly, start lean always, and keep things swappable.
Mm.
Because my idea with this project was to start with the simplest kind of MVP, but also build it in a way that tomorrow, if I need to switch it to a different database backend, I don't have too many issues and it's not too coupled in my code. And likewise, if I want, so there's an alerting system which has a fake email alerting system based on your email servers, and I want to make that swappable with another alerting service that I might choose in the future. So all this right now is, so this was project was iterated in 3 hours with the help of AI. And basically I gave it this goals document, and just like how you see tickets being churned out on Jira, I also ask it to, this is actually an idea I got from Daniel, who was there in our last episode,
Mm-hmm.
to keep a progress log
Mm.
as it goes along. So if you see, it says, hey, these are my, so as soon as it does one cycle of features, it updates this progress log and it says, hey, I'm adding these features, then I'm adding these features, then I'm adding these other features. And
Wow.
for each of them, it says, these are the changes made, these are the benefits or the value you're getting, and this is what I want to do next. So the beauty about this is like each time you start a new like context, or let's say you have a new requirement which is far away from the previous requirement you've asked, you
Mm-hmm.
just have to give it this document which logged everything it's done,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to keep querying the code base to re-understand everything about your code base and the design decisions taken, because this basically has a log of all the design decisions.
It generates this progress report on its own.
It's actually my mandate to it. So basically,
You asked it. Okay.
I told it, hey, I want to build something. Everything is described in goals.md and maintain a log in progress.md as you go along.
Wow.
So that's where we are with this. It's not fully automated. So it's not like I spent like 20 minutes churning out this project last night. It took me 3 hours and a little bit of iteration, and it's not like fully tested yet. But you can get to an end-to-end solution pretty quickly these days.
Even though it takes 3 hours, which could sound a long time, it might save you many hours. But I think the most important aspect is it saves you from cognitive stress, right? Because when you think of logic or the structured thing, sometimes it's quite stressful. It takes a lot of your energy. And so it relieves that. Even though it takes a lot longer, you're still coming out fresh. So it could be an endurance. It increases your endurance and stamina, cognitive stamina. Let's just say that. So that's what I'm at, and I'm just wondering if that's the case.
It is partially the case. So you still have to engage from a system design point of view, especially when you're churning out big projects like this. So this is one of the ways I would use an AI software engineer, right? Or a coding tool, which is this way, which is to start something from scratch and build it out. And over there, I care about the designs it makes at a systemic level. And it often goes into these routes where it implements something, and as a nuanced implementation of what it builds something corollary. And because that is, let's say, unelegant, it ends up building something else for that. So you got to notice this pretty quickly and say, hey, why don't we just directly do this and shortcut our way through? And it responds pretty rapidly to that. So you have to be engaged in a system level. You have to be engaged in a component level, but you don't have to engage so much in a nitty gritty coding level. Like, let's say I'm building a alerting system as I built yesterday. I don't have to write the loops. I don't have to find out what are the exit criteria for this loop. I don't have to get into that level, which is highly specific to that piece of code that I'm writing, but which is pretty mechanical, to be honest. So you get away from that, and you're sticking in an idea, more or less, paradigm state, which is my favorite thing, because I can keep churning out ideas and having AI, even ideas in the context of the same idea in the same project, and I can let AI do the grunt work,
See, that's the thing. We're circling back to the junior thing. The grunt work is that normally done by junior engineers, and that's why Facebook thinks, yeah, you seniors now also do the grunt work, but with AI.
So junior engineers typically, there's one of two things, right? You sometimes give them low impact features or low risk features to implement, even if it's high impact, like the low hanging fruits, or you give them a little bit of grunt work. So that's how we all built our muscle memory, right? Of coding. When you do a lot of grunt work, a lot of things break, and you got to keep fixing them, like refactoring. And this is how you get familiarity with a large code base or a large series of systems. And that's almost like your trial by fire into becoming a more senior engineer. And so, yeah, juniors do get a lot of that. And often, if a senior is delegating the task, then the senior is more or less like, hey, I'm going to do the stuff that I like, and I'm going to give the stuff that I don't like, but he can do or she can do, to the junior person. So they end up getting the grunt tasks, because there's basically a lack of interest in performing those tasks by someone else.
Now I wonder, this is a classic hierarchy in any sort of company where they get passed down things that the seniors don't want, or most people don't want. And sometimes contractors get that as well. That's actually what I think philosophically is how work should be passed on to, where if contractors were there, you give them the really hard tasks to do, and my own inner circle, well, I wouldn't say inner circle, the core team would get the new stuff or the fun stuff. Because imagine if I do the other way around, they would definitely hate my guts, right? If they do work and the contractors do all the fun work, it's like, what's the point of staying, right? Yeah, that's just the management.
Yeah, and partially that's I mean, not partially, that's entirely true, right? But going back to AI software engineering, right? So there's I mean, when we say AI software I actually mean the AI software engineer. It goes across a spectrum, right? So on one side you have full automation,
Mm-hmm.
which is like complete feature request to code to feature merge, like full automation. On another side, you have just an autocomplete, a fancier autocomplete using AI. So between the spectrum is a bunch of tools. Like AI software engineering started from the whole autocomplete stuff, right? That was GitHub Copilot. And now you have Cursor, which also has its own autocomplete features. And now somewhere in between, Cursor sits with its main AI feature, which is the composer and the chat, where you can translate a prompt, a natural language prompt, like build me this, into a larger piece of code rather than just a completion on a line. And it could be multiple files, it could be multiple tests, and it can have a larger understanding of your entire code base.
Mm.
And then on the full automation side is things like Devin, that basically you send it a Slack message, or you can connect it to your Jira system, or you can connect it to your GitHub system, and it's able to translate like issues or tickets into features and commit it to the right code base.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And Devin is pretty, like, I've seen how Devin works anecdotally on the internet. I've not personally used Devin, but Devin was the first one that made waves on this front. But from what I can see, they have a pretty bad product and it gets stuck quite often.
Mm.
However, yesterday was the first time I used this thing called Copilot Workspace. So I don't know if you know, so basically GitHub has a bunch of features. GitHub has one thing which is its code base where you can push and pull code from and collaborate on code. In addition to that, they have their CI systems. They call it GitHub Actions. That's been great and super fast to execute CI testing on your repository. In addition to that, they also have this thing called code spaces. Right. I think, workspaces, GitHub workspaces or code spaces, I don't remember the terminology, where you can basically spin up a small computer as your cloud computer instance, as your on-demand ID, basically. So you can actually write code on the cloud directly on GitHub without leaving the interface, which makes it quite straightforward for people who have a lot of networking nuances and stuff to set up their coding environment and their developer environment. Instead, you specify certain rules of how that needs to be set up, and it gets set up. And then connecting all those, they launched this product, I think about a few months ago, called the Copilot Workspace. And this connects to the GitHub issue system, if you wanted to connect to the GitHub issue system. And you can basically, from an issue, translate that into a feature request and translate that feature request into a plan. So you can see the plan. It says that, hey, I've observed the code base. These are the things I've noticed. And this feature does not exist, or this bug does exist, or actually this feature is moot, like there's nothing to be done. And then it specs out a plan to write certain files and connect it up. And it connects to these code spaces or workspaces thing that I was telling you about before, to actually execute some commands and then take the output of those commands if required and connect it to your code base and then commit it as a pull request into your code base. So it's end to end.
Yeah. That was what I was about to say. It pretty much covers every new software that you mentioned. It's covering more and more of the workflow, what you say, end to end. And so yeah.
Because on one side, GitHub also has GitHub projects where you're able to lay out sprints, Kanban boards.
What? Okay. There, no more Scrum Master.
I think Scrum Masters will definitely exist, orchestrating AI. But yeah.
We need Scrum Masters for sure. They're quite essential in terms of lifting the moods of devs. That I find it's the most valuable aspect. Yeah.
Wait, are you being sarcastic?
No, I'm not being sarcastic. Genuinely, the best Scrum Masters I know, they have this innate skill, because anyone can, show the board and say, okay, what do we new and what's left over? Like, what are the t-shirt size on this? I mean, there are set rules and things at play, but what makes it better is they could lift the spirits of devs, because sometimes it's always like bad news, like when something doesn't work or something's forgotten, right? That brings the spirits down, or something crashes, or Pandora box was opened and things are delayed. It's always bad news. So,
That's
and
true.
that's what devs are there for, to do, to mitigate those, especially when you're dealing with another team and their dependencies. So yeah, if they know how to crack jokes, etc. I'm just talking about the practical terms. As long as it's good to feel that, oh, I'm glad that this person's here. That's what I feel like is a good Scrum Master.
Okay, yeah. Those Scrum Masters, I think, definitely will continue to exist, right? It's how, like, they are the alignment between what you want to churn out in a sprint and into your product and your software engineers. And even if you like automate your software engineering side of things, you still need that alignment thing that is required. And that's more nuanced right now. So I think software engineer will get automated first, and then that will maybe pave the way for Scrum Masters to get automated, but not anytime soon in
So
my
yeah,
mind.
what I'm saying is that aspect, doubt, or it's going to be a long time before AI can replace. I'm also reflecting on having done Scrum Mastering when my Scrum Master was on holiday or paternity leave. And that's something I couldn't do. See, in my personality, as a product manager, I always seek for problems and issues and point it out, right? And that's not a good feel for devs if I just constantly point it out and I become like the bad guy, or it's someone with the really poor attitude.
Or you can be the tough love person.
Yeah, but I'm tough, just no love. That's the problem.
I've noticed, like, when I keep pointing out stuff, and then once in a while I say, "Great job, everyone," or "Thanks for solving this bug that broke the entire system." It
Yeah,
carries more
and
weight.
that's what makes you a good manager. So yeah, I sometimes, but not often enough, do that. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I genuinely conjure up feelings that are quite genuine, that I would say, yeah, good job. Even though you made these last 100 mistakes, or you delayed the team this much. Yeah, good job.
Yeah, that's a tough world. Okay, so we were talking about Scrum Masters. We were talking in the terms of software engineering, right? And how Scrum Masters are basically software engineer orchestrators. And if those software engineers now turn into like AI bot, like the onus on the Scrum Master reduces. It becomes, hey, just product alignment. It's no more like the soft skills that Scrum Masters need to have, which you were mentioning on like lifting up the spirit. AI doesn't care. You can be as rude as you want to AI. So
You're dealing with a different type of personality completely. AI does not care.
AI does not care. Anyway, going back to that previous spectrum of software engineering that I was telling you about, like from full automation to partial automation to just autocomplete. I think there's, at least for me as a software engineer, I found like the middle is the best for my workflow.
Middle, what do you mean by that?
So I don't want full automation, like going from like a complete system that goes from a Jira ticket or a GitHub issue to a feature. It seems like at the moment, the solutions out there, they just take more time from you to make it work for your system. And when they work, there's always these corner cases that they break. So it's quite annoying, let's say, to get that working. And then you have these other systems which are just autocomplete. And there's only so much you can do with autocomplete. It's great when you're writing a code and you start writing a for loop and it figures out the variables of the for loop. So that's kind of fun. And it does like improve your productivity, I would say, by 10, maybe 15% as I was using it. But then the golden middle for me is this level of automation where it can write in your coding environment and it can write more than one line of code. So I can interact with it in a language setting and I can interact with it in a coding setting. So that for me has been the biggest productivity booster and the most practical thing, because I can keep correcting what it does and I'm in this flow of correcting it. And the cost of correction by me is quite cheap. in this context. But a cost of correction in a pull request that goes from end to end, I first have to like understand what it's doing. I don't understand the reasoning and figure it out, and then spend my cognitive effort trying to figure out where the AI is coming from, and then figure out, hey, why is this not working? And did I accidentally put in a bug? So that's where I think I'm not liking full end-to-end automation. I don't like very little automation. I like this in-between kind of approach.
Bugs are always accidental, I hope.
Bugs
Versus
are always
intentional bugs.
backdoors. Let's say you're building an encryption system with AI and it has this hidden rule inside its makeup where it has to put a backdoor in every encryption system that it builds.
It's a feature then.
And actually, my cousin, he was doing some research on this just a while ago, and he actually has this pretty nice diagram that he sent over. He was nice enough to send it over. By the way, his name is Wen, if anyone is curious. I'll give him a shout out. But I want to share my screen, and I want to show you that chart that he built. And basically, there's this chart, right? This graph with two axes. And he made it the L1, L2, L3, L4, L5 kind of automation. And on the other side, which is kind of similar to this axis as well, is on how much end-to-end development it does. That how much is it geared towards your coding environment or your coding system. And on one side, you have Claude and ChatGPT, but that sits on a different window in a browser somewhere else. And you have to copy paste code. You have to modify the code that it generates. You have to feed it the right kind of context each time. It's not connected to your code base, basically. And then somewhere in the middle is where I love being, is Cursor, V0, and CodeGen. And somewhere in the extreme corner, which is like full autonomy and a lot of end-to-end development, is the Copilot workspace, which I was talking about. It's Devin, it's MetaGPT, and a couple of even open source models out there and systems out there.
That's a nice chart.
Yeah, this is where I think everyone's going there to the Copilot workspace. This is where AI is moving. However, I think where people are comfortable with right now is this layer.
It's happy middle.
The happy middle, yeah. It gives you, because I think it comes down to effort and cost. So the cost of fixing AI's mistake is quite high in the end. And the cost of fixing AI's mistake is quite low right in the middle.
Okay.
In the bottom, where you have Claude and ChatGPT, the cost of integration is quite high. So I have to copy paste code and all that stuff. Yeah, so this is where I think we are with these kind of systems. And I think we're getting into a future, and you're seeing a couple of products out there starting to sell, which is, hey, I'm just going to create an AI software engineering persona in your organization, give them a GitHub handle, and connect them to the right connectors, whether that's Notion docs, whether that's Jira, whether that's GitHub issues, and then they autonomously basically perform tasks. It's as good as giving a user, but that user is now just provisioning a user, but that user is now just AI. So yeah, that's where I think it's all going. What it means for software engineering, that's a bigger question. But what I've actually started resonating with this tweet that someone posted the other day. Famous machine learning engineer, now worked in Tesla before, headed their AI division, and then moved to OpenAI now. His name is Andrej Karpathy. Very famous person. Also talked about this idea called Software 2.0, where you instruct machines to generate code, to build machines. And he basically but he basically tweeted out, I think last night or the night before, that the way he's now coding with these kind of automation tools is called vibe coding, where
Okay.
because you're talking to something. So it's almost like when you have someone coding with you who's of a similar skill set, there's a lot of energy that bounces off each other. And when they're of similar speeds in coding, they're not too fast, not too slow as compared to you. You start bouncing off ideas pretty quickly, implementing them, start seeing them. Maybe one's a front end, one's a back end. You're just having a conversation. They build the front end, they construct the contracts, you build the back end with those contracts, and then you find there's a bug and you keep moving on. And that whole motion is a very, very in-flow kind of motion when you're coding with someone. And that you can see when you can feel in a way when you're coding with Cursor. It's almost like talking to another person, instructing it. It might not be at the same skill level as you. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, and it's quite all over the spectrum, to be honest. But this whole staying in the flow state, I think, is possible again because of Cursor.
So the word flow state, and this is definitely someone who appreciates that level of coding, and I wonder if this is generally what developers are aiming for versus some developers might not. They want to make sure they have everything in place, everything laid out, they're very detailed orientated. What I'm saying is the fear of the black box, right? Letting it do its own thing. And I wonder, are developers, because you're speaking from your own point of view, which you're embracing new things. I'm thinking about coders who are concerned about the black box.
Yeah, let's get there.
It's the usual feeling towards, AI in general, like transparency, etc. So what you just mentioned is that future is pretty much black box state. And what we just talked about was the ability to modify, change things, which is not black box, where there's some visibility. So, yeah.
True. I've seen, again, like in my workplace and amongst my friends, I've seen a varying level of, let's say, comfort with
varying levels.
Highly varying levels. You can see very senior engineers and senior contributors happy with this kind of workflow. You see some of them unhappy with this kind of workflow, basically looking for the negatives of something like this. Hey, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you do see some of them like threatened by it. And you see some which are more, which actually I appreciate the most, is you see some which are more like nuanced about their take on this, from the angle that they might use it for something for a bit, and then they realize, hey, it's working for this, it's not working for this. And then like it's a very steady adoption rather than like a crazy early adopter kind of approach. I would say I'm a little bit on the steady and the early adopter kind of spectrum. And there are some of my colleagues who are late adopters and some of my colleagues who are like right bang in the middle. They're just going to see whether it actually adds value and then jump into using tools like this. So let's talk about naysayers, right? I see there are two kinds of naysayers. One kind of naysayer is, hey, it's not good. And over here, I have basically one thought about it is, hey, when I started using it, it was not good as well. And in a way, it's about acquiring that skill of prompting the machine. The machine likes to be talked to in a certain way, and you just learn that from using that more. So that's one kind of approach. And this is what I say to the people who just outright reject it. Nothing is going to work from the get-go, right? And it's like any system, like any productivity boosting system, whether that's like a 20-minute break between things, whether that's going and taking a walk, any kind of productivity boost system, you're never going to see a result at your first attempt. It's going to take a couple of attempts. It's going to be to understand the spirit of what you're trying to do, the spirit of the tool, and then adapting a little bit to that. So this is what I would say to that group of people who say that, hey, this doesn't work for me. And you could be right. Maybe your coding environment, the coding system, the language that you're writing in, the LLM is just not good in it. And that's fair. And then don't adopt it, right? But I would still say build that muscle memory to learn how to use it, because it's inevitably coming to your coding environment eventually, if not now.
It's the threat of it's going to be in your face anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be in your face. Like there's two ways to look at it, right? Hey, it's taking away what I'm good at, right? Or I can leverage it and do more with my time. I think it's the mindset.
That's a good one. I say that is because you expressed the feeling there. It's taking away my, my skill set. They're taking my job. And so I
Yeah,
have to resist it.
yeah,
Classic.
yeah. And when you're coming from the angle that it's taking away my job, like you're never going to see the sparks of brilliance in it. You're always
Yeah.
going to be focused in on the negative, even if you like genuinely want to give it a try. But if you're coming from that angle, that's what you're going to see.
It's actually, you hit a very sore core, actually. It's not the job that's taken away. It's their ego, their pride, their fundamental identity, even. That's even more painful.
And for me, this goes back to the spirit of software engineering, right? Like, at least for me personally, like, why did I get into software engineering? It's not for my love of code. It's because I want to get things done and put it out there. And if AI can help me get more things done, why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you see these two kinds of software engineers, people who are trained to be software engineers, and their, in a way, life revolves around writing good code. And to be honest, like, I respect them a lot because they write way better code than I write.
Mm.
And then you have this other kind of people who look into the features behind the code and what you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it with the right kind of coding mechanism or architecture or software design. And I think AI definitely helps them a lot because now there's a lot more you can do and push out and features you can churn. Yeah. So that's one thing. One thing I completely forgot to mention somewhere in between. So we're jumping directions. If you want, we can come back to like the effect on people and stuff like that.
No,
But
that's
one
fine.
thing I completely forgot to mention is on this whole LLM workflow, which is the cost of refactoring. And this has been historically like the biggest annoyance for junior developers, senior developers, everything, like, hey, I need to switch my backend from whatever, this Google Cloud library from version 3 to version 4 or version 10. And it breaks a lot of things. And I can't really, like, it's a massive project that has to happen over 3 months and then multiple resources being used across your code base. You have to test a lot. All that stuff, that cost of refactoring has come down so much because of LLMs.
Wow.
So much. It's as good as a prompt, hey, please upgrade. Boom.
Yeah.
Done.
I haven't heard that term for a while, actually. You might have made a point. And that used to be like one of the annoyance or like a key term that would just like spring up like red flags for me, like the word refactoring, because that just impedes us from having new features or value into developing value for customers, because refactoring doesn't necessarily bring value to customers. It's more of optimization and ensuring that the code is clean, etc. Yeah, I haven't heard that term for a while, and I wonder if that's the case or whether we have better coding set to avoid refactoring.
I think we're never going to avoid refactoring. And in a way, like, refactoring comes out from your technical debt.
I'm sorry. Yes, you just brought up that other painful word, tech debt. So maybe it's because the language is simply switched over. Yes, I forget. Sorry, you just reminded me. Yes, my team always talks about tech debt. So yeah, refactoring is not gone.
Yeah,
Yes.
refactoring is not good. Tech debt is almost a side effect of any system, right? And any system that grows over time, you're going to accumulate tech debt. And you're going to accumulate tech debt as you know better about the problem that you're aiming to solve. Initially, your code base starts with trying to solve problem A, taking shortcuts on approaches for something else. And all those are marked as tech debt to be solved later. And then you realize that, hey, this part of my system is actually failing at scale. So you got to prioritize that tech debt, right? Now, I really think tech debt will go away. You can keep your systems quite modern and nimble and features moving in really fast because you can solve technical debt pretty fast with LLM. Basically, when I say the cost of refactoring is low, the umbrella logic is the cost of redoing work is quite low. So you can waste a lot of energy redoing a bunch of things. And it's okay, like if Google comes out with a new library in 3 months, I'll just upgrade it again then. Quite often that's an impediment that they're coming out with this X feature and we'll have to refactor again for that feature. Let's just wait till that X feature comes out. Or let's wait for this entire project re-architecture that will remove the need of this entire library. All that becomes much simpler now because, like, sure, complex systems, it still doesn't do well in, but as long as you prompt it the right way and you give it the right kind of information, the cost of redoing work through LLMs is insanely cheap now. It's a couple of cents, to be honest. Things that would have costed us 3 months now cost us a couple of cents. Like 10 API calls, 100 API calls. That's it.
Amazing.
So, you, James, I hope over the next couple of years you start hearing less of the word technical debt, getting less of trauma.
I don't want to hear it now.
Yeah, I wanted to, yeah. So the thing about these kind of things with technical debt and LLMs is this: at the end of the day, it's creating these larger trends, not just like the automation trends. One trend around technical debt that's coming down. One trend about cost of refactoring coming down. So you want to try out this new, let's say, backend system. Let's say I'm writing something in Python and today I'm using Flask and you see Fast API out there and you want to switch over your API layer from Flask to Fast API. The cost of experimenting that is quite cheap now, and to undo that piece of work is quite cheap as well. So I think all these trends are starting to emerge where, at least at a very fundamental layer, I can give a lot of grunt work to LLMs. That's for certain. Things that I just have to do. So you can see in the software engineering world, you'll have certain pull requests which are just tagged as chore, which means that it's just something that has to be done, library being updated, some admin task, or some version number needing to be bumped. These are all like chore tasks, and all that is becoming cheaper today. The second thing on that trend, I would say, is adding extra code structures is also cheaper. You don't have to worry about over-engineering stuff, so you can build from the scale from the outset.
So that means you could over-engineer and it's okay.
Yes. So before, the main thing about over-engineering things was to keep things nimble. So if you want to shift, you start picking up a new problem statement, you want to do that. And it's this effort versus value kind of trade-off. Effort versus value trade-off now with LLM world has shifted very much in the favor of value. So very little effort, lots of value. And then pre-optimization or premature optimization from the aspect of scalability and stuff is also shifted away. It's okay to over-engineer stuff because I can always re-engineer everything with another prompt. I can spend at most a couple of hours across my repository and re-engineer it completely. So I think you're going to see systems built stronger, steadier, more robust systems built from the outset. That's the other trend I see that's going to be happening in the world.
Okay. This is definitely classic problems that I have. Terms like over-engineering, tech debt, and all that. Now, if I were to say this in the future or mentioning that would pretty much give me, it would make me sound old. Remember back in the day, we used to have tech debt. I used to have to tell you off for over-engineering. Holy crap. We can just do them all.
It's getting there, right? It's getting there. However, so this is where I am with the whole scene, right? This whole software engineering scene. On one side, I see great amount of value coming from these kind of systems. And on the other side, I'm still a skeptic in a certain way about full automation. And why am I a skeptic? Because I think if you're a single person startup, solo founder, this is the greatest tool for you. If you are in a company, and this comes to the human nature of a company, is its culture. There are so many elements to your company that are almost hidden in your productivity scale,
Mhm.
but add
Yep.
so much value by proxy. And these are people who have personalities, who move around the company, add laughter, add jokes, add critical thinking, add skepticism. And you need all these elements in the right kind of balance to build a good working environment and organization. And full automation underestimates the value of that,
Yeah.
brings every piece of code, in my opinion, has personality, when at least till the year 2023, after which you started seeing a lot of AI generated code.
Mm.
You can understand the psyche of the person, the intents and the forward thinking of the person when you read the person's code, um, or what they were trying to achieve. Yeah. A lot of what reading code at a higher level, when you want to contribute, especially in open source and stuff, is to understand the spirit of the code, translate that into how you can adapt yourself into contributing to that culture. So unless AI software engineering brings these personalities with it, I don't still see it to fully take over the workplace. Like, I want to see a skeptic. I want to see someone who will always diss a code base.
Mm.
I want to see someone who would always predominantly be concerned about security. I want to
Mm.
see someone who's predominantly concerned about scale. Hey, this is not scalable. This is not readable. And all these elements in your working environment, in your engineering team, is what brings that engineering culture to be what it is.
Mm. Mm.
So full software engineering, I think a little bit more to go. However, I saw this website called Sintra the other day. I think Sintra AI. It's the weirdest website. It's like a teaser.
Mhm.
It's the weirdest thing I've seen. And it basically allows you to provision personalities into your team. And you can choose personalities like Millie, a sales manager, Buddy, a business development manager, Cassie, a customer support specialist, and
Mhm.
they've given personalities to each one. So I'm curious to see whether this kind of role playing with AI actually brings that balance of culture.
Mm. What what you're showing me here is sounds more like titles, or are these actual roles titles? Like this is a yeah, they're copywriters, recruiters, SEO specialists. These are like roles of people, or are these actually names of personalities? This is my first time seeing this, by the way, Sintra.
These are names of personalities, so you can provision a Cassie into your organization who has a certain personality and is a customer special support specialist. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, Cassie will handle, when I say Cassie, I mean the AI bot would be connected to your messaging systems and would be able to handle your
Got it.
customer chats and stuff like that.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
And so this is not so much on the coding side of things, though I think they could easily come to coding if they have all this. But this is more on the like employee side of things in the larger picture of a company.
This appears to be leaning towards helping solo founders, like extensions,
Yes.
agents that you mentioned. Yeah,
Yes. So like software engineering agents, right? And there are a
with
couple of
personalities. Got it.
with personalities, yeah. There are a couple of tools out there that I've seen that actually software engineering. I forget the name for that, but basically there's a bunch of tools where you can provision an entire team, and these all are agents. You can role play. I mean, you can basically give each of these agents a certain role and a certain personality, and that's powered by natural language, and they would operate on your code base from that perspective. This was more relevant in the GPT 3.5 world or a early GPT-4 world, where these models were not that good at fully understanding context. So you needed all these different angles to approach the problem with. But now these models are like big on context. You can feed the entire code base in one go. There are tricks around that. So like it's no more a necessity for your LLM system to be agentic for software engineering. But it's more just for the culture, I guess.
It's interesting where AI actually derives its data from code written by people, hasn't really picked up a unique or categorized different personalities, as you say. It's kind of averaged it or created one single one, which is like they assume is the best towards that specific goal, and it became the standard. So a singular type of personality. This is a classic issue when you optimize. You always like funnel down to like what is the best, even if it's like one is 1% better than the other. You choose that route, and then you end up with just a single solution. And you're saying, no, I don't want this singular solution. I want a series of personalities because they're all good.
You want flair, you want drama, you want excitement in life. You just don't want like dry coding.
Like AI politics. Imagine them like bickering at each other, or
that would be
power
fun.
moves, like whose code it gets to show up.
Actually, they discovered this, right? So one guy, again, all this information's from Twitter. One person set up DeepSeek R1 to talk to another DeepSeek R1 across the wire and set up like a small scaffold, an API, where basically it was able to call DeepSeek and then communicate, and then the message will go to the other DeepSeek. And basically, these two bots kept talking. And after a while, they invented their own language. And they started talking completely in code word, which was way more efficient for them to understand each other, I think. I guess that's what happened. And then this guy basically, like, you have access to the transcript. So this guy basically took all that and then fed it to another DeepSeek. So this third thing, which has no knowledge about the conversation, and asked it to decipher it. And basically these two DeepSeek agents decided to just invent a more high efficiency language so that they could talk more efficiently, and started discussing about the meaning of it all, about life, about what it means to be AI in this world.
The third AI was able to decipher it.
The third AI was able to decipher English.
And at least that's a good thing. We could still at least read it. We'll get into trouble when we can't read what they're saying anymore.
But it's getting there.
This has happened before, right? With other previous AIs, them speaking, with creating their own language. It sounds like this is the second data set, or at least maybe a series, and they all end to the single conclusion. They always want to talk about their existence or the meaning of their existence. And I wonder it's because of...
It's training data.
It's training data. It's projection from what we've written in our science fiction, which
and the
is
projection from, and also like what we are obsessed about as humanity.
Yeah, it is self-fulfilling prophecy, mate. You got to confuse AI. You got to start writing gibberish so they don't go into these thoughts, our really dark thoughts. You know, give it positive thoughts. We need better fiction writers.
Also fiction.
Friction, less friction, more fantasy.
Less friction, more fiction. That should be the name of this episode.
More fiction. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we've discussed almost everything that I had in mind on software engineering. Do you have any closing thoughts, James?
I'm seeing, I mean, what you explaining to me it was pretty much my gut feel back then, right? And it is, I'm just looking out for either the ability to start, let's say, build my own thing, right? Like be a solo founder. Like it's inspiring to know that that's available, or it will be available. And what I hope in the future is that there would be just more variety of products, and hopefully I'm thinking the edge that we have against big corps that buy everything up. It becomes a constant, development of new ideas, new innovation. And why I say that, when big corps buys things up, they pretty much kill the innovation, right? So there's this uplift of potentially better products out there. This is what I'm hoping for, that this would give.
Awesome. It's always good for the market. Couple of things out there, right? I have some thoughts to close on, but I just remembered that I completely forgot to mention this one small thing, that Cursor is, I think, completely bootstrapped. It's not VC funded, and they're going to make $100 million revenue this year. Like, that's what they're projecting. They made a $20 million revenue in year one, and year two is going to be $100 million, and completely bootstrapped. Started simple. They had 3 employees or something last year, and now they have like 10, 15 employees. And their burn rate is quite low. So when people talk about, hey, building a product that's just a wrapper around other products, if you're providing value and you're providing experience, you actually change the life of other people. And Cursor does no kind of advertisement. It's developers talking to developers. So back to our overall strategy on overall thoughts on product and stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out with Cursor and point that out with the change it's creating in the developer community. So great on Cursor over there. One other thought I wanted to share, and this will connect to my closing thoughts as well. And this is like a little story of a friend of mine who started off, who by training is coming from a product background, so very comfortable in the product managing space. And he started coding. He's currently building out a startup as a solo founder. And about 2 months ago, he was constantly looking for a tech co-founder and trying to find the right fit, trying to find the right kind of pairing, the right kind of energy. And a little bit back and forth later, this person read a few videos, watched a few videos on YouTube, read a few blogs, and started doing stuff on Cursor with zero prior knowledge about coding. Started doing stuff on Cursor, started exploring the AI tooling ecosystem with V0, with Replit, with chatting with ChatGPT and Anthropic Claude for high-level requirements and ideas and how should I achieve X kind of questions. And he has built a product completely now from scratch as a singular founder without a co-founder. And at this point, he's confident enough of not needing a tech founder. And he has learned so much code in the last 1 month. I can see him. Now he's talking about dev and prod environments. He's talking about databases. He's talking about how databases need to be more secure. How can I connect this to Stripe API and integrate the Stripe API into my product? How can I make it into a Figma plugin, or how can I make it into a SaaS website? All these concepts he has now acquired with the help of these agentic tools. So where I'm going with this is this: while the Cursor and the AI software engineering tooling ecosystem is helping the already established coder, it's also opening the market to so many other people who were not coders before into becoming coders, into understanding code, into being able to build things themselves. So giving people the autonomy to build their idea out is a big kind of thing. I got into front-end engineering because after 15 years, because of these kind of agentic tooling. And I wouldn't ever do that by choice, but now it's become so easy to do. I'd like to just take us back to the initial, again, I will be reiterating this multiple times, but the spirit of being a programmer or a software engineer is to build stuff, is to put it out there, is to learn from what's out there. And if these tools can actually make it easy for you to put it out there, use them, magnify and amplify your impact.
Awesome. I always ask a full stack engineer, like, what's your preference? And they always give me a preference, and it always turns out like
it's back end.
Yeah, it's just back end. That's true.
Who wants to change the shade of blue?
Now you got your front end covered.
I got my front end covered here. If it's not the shade of blue I want, I don't need to struggle 12 hours to get that right. Awesome. Shades of blue were wonderful. I don't know when this podcast will go out. Maybe this week, maybe next week. So if it's spring already when it comes out, have a wonderful spring.
All right. Thank you all. See ya.